Thank you so much for sitting down today with me. I've got Lyndy Bazile, visual artist and owner of Afroplump. So, Lyndy, go ahead and tell me a little bit about how you got started into your creative career.
Sure. Thank you for having me. My creative career, man, I guess I was in my early 20s when I started teaching myself how to animate. So I started off doing animation. I worked for a comedian in Massachusetts and did a web series as a self-taught animator for a few years. Um, Came back to Fort Wayne, went to school for animation, graduated, and have been painting ever since.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What got you into painting?
Once I graduated from St. Francis, my last semester was really hard. I lost a pregnancy, like as I was just finishing up my last semester. So as that was semester was ending, I was graduating. I was losing a baby. I was really struggling, emotionally and like in many ways. And so I needed to do art, and I needed to create. Since I lost something that I had been creating physically, I tried to make art instead. And so that's what I've been doing ever since.
That's really beautiful.
Thank you.
That's just a very cool way to kind of take something that is so personally connected and turn that into a creative like catharsis.
Yes, I'm really always grateful to my daughter. Her name's Rosa Joy, for giving me that gift of making me feel like I'm free and I'm able to create. So she, did a lot for me.
What else kind of goes into your inspiration when it comes to creating?
Well, around that time when I started painting, I was trying to find that closure and like resolve from the loss of my daughter, but I also was realizing that I had a lot of questions about my own identity. And I wanted to really explore my ancestors and my Haitian background. My dad's from Haiti, and I was born in Fort Wayne, so I'm disconnected from that culture. And so, that loss of my daughter, and then just realizing that I had so many other disconnects in my own identity, and that I was already painting. So I just started exploring those feelings through my art. So that really inspired me a lot to connect with mostly women ancestors that I like to envision being around and supportive of me and still living through me and channeling through me. That's really a big inspiration for a lot of my work.
So, you kind of mentioned that you are very much an advocate for diverse representation in visual art. How else are you kind of making that in your own work and also providing that to others?
Yeah, so when I started painting, that was really the prime time for a large cultural uproar that was about to be coming our way. So as I was just getting into the groove of my painting and my art career, this obvious issue with that we have as a culture with race and um, just discrimination and all these things came to a cultural boiling point. So I felt like that was also a place where I could express in my work, and I needed to make sure that my art was addressing those issues. My public art is very intentionally focused on making sure that people in marginalized communities around Fort Wayne can see themselves represented publicly and see themselves embraced in our city. I am always very conscious of the identities that I am portraying. As a multiracial person, I have a lot of internal just conversations and dialogue about, what those racial identities are doing, what they mean, how they're being expressed in the world, and how I need to, work with my privilege and all of those things. It's really nuanced. So I'm always making sure that in my personal artwork, I'm considering those things and trying to be clear about how I'm presenting them on paper.
You've also started a initiative and program to help others begin to share in that representation. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, thank you. I'm just doing my very first workshop. So these are art workshops that I'm offering through WonderCommer. It's a 4-part series. And I really wanted to be intentional about making sure that people from historically marginalized communities were going to be able to be present and included in these workshops. Because coming up in Fort Wayne most of the art spaces that I have found myself in have been majority white spaces. People that feel comfortable, people that feel welcome, invited, or able to show up are often overwhelmingly white in a lot of these art spaces in Fort Wayne. So I wanted to be very intentional about extending an invitation and making that a priority to invite people of color to my art workshops. So I spent weeks reaching out to groups, just cold calling and letting them know what I was doing. It's my first time. Making several attempts to invite people from different groups and organizations around town. And then the last couple days before my workshop actually started, I opened registration up to the public. That ended up making it so that my workshop is like 75% people of color. So it's a majority space for people of color, which is really, I think, a big goal of mine to just do from an equitable standpoint. Like I need to focus on making spaces for people of color to be creative, to gather together, to have community, to collaborate. And so that's what I'm doing with those workshops. I hope that it's being creative. I really want to support people in their creative endeavors and like bringing out their creative collaboration efforts in that way.
Love that you're creating this intentional space that gives that sense of belonging for people who haven't necessarily felt that in other outlets here in Fort Wayne and Northeast Indiana. And starting this kind of building block, what kind of impact do you think that has on, creatives and artists of color, both on the individual level, but in our community as well?
Well, my hope is that through doing this sort of like prioritizing of invitation and intentional, effort to include people who have been marginalized for so long, it'll get us to equality through equity. How I often think about it. I think, equality, we need to get to equality, but you have to go through equity first because we have had such a history of exclusion. So having that intentionality is really important. And then I hope that through this process and through these efforts, people from, communities that have been excluded will realize that there are a lot of opportunities to be creative, to have your voice heard, to collaborate, to speak up, to be a part of this, larger community that is growing, in our city.
Well, Lyndy, thank you so much for sitting down with me today to have this conversation.
Thank you for inviting me. It was great.